And welcome back to another episode of Motivate with Coach Camp. I, of course, am your host, Coach Camp. And as you can see, we are not in the SRP studios. In fact, today we are in a new location. We are down here in Olive Branch at the OBTV studios with none other than Mayor Ken Adams of Olive Branch. So if you guys follow me every week, and I know so many of you do all around the world, you like to get a lot of variety of different stories and where people come from and what brought them into the place that they're at today, especially leadership roles. As y'all know, I am big into leadership, and so I thought to myself, hey, what better person to interview than a person I'm about to speak with at a leadership conference that we will touch on briefly. So at this time, welcome with me, Mayor Ken Adams of Olive Branch. How you doing, sir?
Doing great, Coach. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, I would say thanks for coming out in the studio, but it's actually quite the opposite. You invited me to yours.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. So whenever I bring my guest in, one of the things that I like to try to build off of is the person that they are. So you got to know the foundation and where they come from and what brought them to the place they are today and what inspired them and the people that inspired them. So if you would, let's just start at the very basics. Okay. Where did you grow up?
Okay, you want me to start like daycare?
Daycare? If you're here in Olive Branch, because that's a foundation that you can't get away from.
I tell you what, I am a product of the DeSoto County school system and the DeSoto County infrastructure. Okay. I moved to South Haven with my family in about 1968 time frame. Okay. And graduated from South Haven High School. And ironically enough, so did Mayor Chip Johnson, Mayor Darren Musselwhite, of course, myself, I mentioned, and Mayor Latimer taught at South Haven High School. So South Haven produced us, good, bad, or indifferent, produced us. I moved to Olive Branch around 42 years ago and lived in the same house for all 42 years. So realtors don't like that. They want you to sell every few years, make a commission. But I love me some Olive Branch, and we're doing some good things here. But grew up in DeSoto County and a product of the DeSoto County school system, migrated to Northwest. Back then, the junior college, now it's called the community college, NWCC, through a criminal justice program. I think you
I did. I went down there and actually had some of the same instructors you had.
Right, right. And then from there to University of Memphis, completed the undergraduate degree and continuing ed, as well as my judicial training at the University of Mississippi. Hotty toddy, Ole Miss.
So, hotty toddy, that's right, baby. So the one thing that you mentioned that I found interesting was that you said the mayors of the respective other cities here in DeSoto County all grew up around here. Yep. And did you guys know each other by chance back then?
Not as close acquaintances because they were all so much older than I am. No, I was older than obviously Mayor Musselwhite. Yeah. And Mayor Johnson and I about the same age. We knew each other in passing. And of course, Mayor Latimer, we knew him as a teacher. We had some contact and not necessarily in a close network, but friends and acquaintances.
Yeah. So when you guys were in school and that, were all y'all thinking politics maybe one day? We'll all just hang out together and do mayor stuff?
I imagine when we were in high school, we were thinking, like all high school kids, when's the next sporting event? And who am I going to date next? And can I get a part-time job to pay my gasoline bill and my insurance? And my insurance on my dad's car, because we did those things back then. We were required to, which was a good thing. So we were rather busy and probably didn't think as much about our career early on. At least I did not.
Yeah, it's funny because in my high school, I can think of a handful of people that they were part of the mayor's youth council stuff, and they had a mind for that, and they actually stayed the course. So they're still into those things today, which is kind of interesting. But more people than not that I find that got into some line of leadership, especially along the lines of politics, they had no idea of that early on. So speaking of that, did you have brothers or sisters growing up?
I have one sibling. I'm an Irish twin.
Okay.
She is 11 months to the day older than I am. I have one Irish twin, one sibling, and still with me today. And she lives in Texarkana, Arkansas. I get to see her often and talk to her on the phone often as well. So that's a good thing.
So growing up then, what kind of influences did you guys have? I mean, playing sports, involved in different community things, stuff, what exactly started to mold the young Ken Adams?
You bet. Playing rec sports, my skill sets were not quite good enough for competitive, but playing rec sports, baseball, football. Back then you had not necessarily Chamber of Commerce, but you had, I'm trying to remember the organization, that had JCs. JCs did a lot of sponsoring and had some men in the community that really gave and poured their hearts into the kids. So that was important. Church was important to build those spiritual skills or gifts that we have, and also parents that demanded that you go to work.
Yeah,
I was pulling that lawnmower cord and mowing grass.
Being an entrepreneur early. Look,
washing cars.
There's a lot to be said for that.
Working at the farmer's market, a lot to be said. And we were taught, whatever you do, be the very best you can be at it, regardless to what that job is.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny because sometimes you don't really realize something in the moment. It takes some years to go by and you reflect on it. But I can think of moments when I had a job that would have been seen as trivial. I'll give you an example. Okay. My first job was here in South Haven at Mega Market. I pushed baskets in from the parking lot.
Yep.
And early on, I was excited.
You didn't have a machine back then.
We didn't have a machine.
You had to pick them bad boys up.
You had to dig in and like get some. And I was a skinny dude, so I didn't have a lot of push on it.
You better not hit a car in the parking lot doing it.
Let me tell you something. And early, I was like really all in, gung ho, and people saw that, and managers saw that. Yeah. And then as some time went on, I became less gung ho and more playful, and I'm like riding the basket across the park. Guess what? Managers also noticed that. Less impressed with those moments.
Understood.
So there is something to be said about, you know, it doesn't matter what the job is. Give your best. People will pay attention, and that actually sets you up for great things down the road. Plus, it also builds a lot of character that you need as life develops.
It does.
So when you were in high school in that, did you have an idea about what you wanted to do when you grew up, as they say?
I can't really say that I did. I did work retail, worked for Kroger in South Haven when it was on the north side of State Line Road. Worked for Kroger and really developed unique skills in catching shoplifters who were pilfering from Kroger.
Did you really?
And I would catch a number of shoplifters and really got into that. Would go down to Justice Court. Back then it was Justice of the Peace. It was a different system, and I would testify. They put it in their pocket, et cetera, and the judge would rule. And that kind of lit a fire under me to go down the path of criminal justice studies at Northwest and University of Memphis. So catching the shoplifters was very unique. Unfortunately, a lot of the stores now, they don't address them. They just let them leave, and we all pay for that.
Yeah.
Shame on them, but back then we certainly...
How old were you at that time?
16, 17, and then I went to Target when Target stores first opened in Whitehaven, up by Methodist South on Wesley Drive, and I was a store detective and caught shoplifters at the local Target store.
So did you have law enforcement in your family? Were like influences there, uncles?
No, not really.
Really?
Not really.
Fascinating. So cops and robbers was a real thing for you?
That was a real thing.
Yeah, I will admit, so growing up in the 80s, that's really my time frame, right? So my time frame in the 80s was Chips Patrol.
Yep.
Miami Vice.
Oh, yeah.
Which, you know, everybody wanted to be Don Johnson back in the day.
He was the man.
You had the stuff and then the boat, of course. The boat was awesome.
But Adam 12?
Oh, Adam 12, that's right. Dragnet was probably more my speed because I'm a little bit goofy that way. But what was funny was I didn't realize at the time, but watching Emergency with Johnny and Roy, and I had all the gear as a kid, you know, the fire gear, so like I would put out fake fires and stuff. I didn't realize how much that was going to influence me at the time and actually push me in that direction. And so as we spoke before, I'm a retired firefighter paramedic from Memphis. And
thank you.
And thank you, sir. And so it was just a passion of mine. And you know, it's funny how sometimes layers will be built that you don't realize are being built in the moment.
Right.
And that's kind of what I go back to a lot of times. It takes years to go by to reflect back, and then you're like, oh, I realize where that seed was planted. Because that's what happens, right? You plant seeds, and then it takes a while sometimes for that to grow. And you were actually planting those seeds.
It gets in your DNA.
It does.
And it becomes you. Matter of fact, we have great first responders, police, fire, and EMS. And occasionally somebody will leave because they're not the highest paid jobs in the world. We know that, but they're very good jobs and they help the public. We have sometimes somebody that will leave, and I'll say they'll be back. And they are, because they can't get that out of their system, and that's good. They have a public service mentality. They want to serve, and grass may look greener on the other side, but if they're built like that and wired like that, they usually migrate back to it.
That is true, and you're right. And even though I retired from the fire department, obviously I'm still involved. I'm a professor in EMS, so it's like, another branch opens up to you, and you go that route. So then that actually kind of brings us to this next point that I wanted to bring up is, at what age was it when you started working at FedEx? Because you mentioned to me you did 38 years.
That's a long time.
That is. I didn't think you were 38 years old.
There's foreign countries not that old. Well,
That's
probably,
true,
probably.
Maybe. I don't know. So I'll take your word on it.
FedEx is a great company.
Yeah.
After working at Target and then getting the criminal justice degree, I was 21 and went through, at the time, they have a security academy. It was full, it wasn't under the color of the law, but it was a 400 and some odd hour academy. And I take that back, 700 hours. We went home. It was 4 to midnight. We didn't stay overnight, but it was put on by the Shelby County Sheriff's Department and FedEx Security Department. So we became commissioned officers, and that migrated there from the earlier store detective days and the criminal justice background. Spent almost 38 years with FedEx and retired as a corporate security director and responsible for large operation. Had some great men and women working with me on the team that made things happen. And to me, that's one of the skill sets that I bring to mayor's office because public safety is #1 priority. We spend over 50% of our operating budget on police, fire, and EMS. It's the main thing, and it should be the main thing. Our citizens have to feel safe when they're in their homes, going to and from places, going to dinner. They've got to feel safe, and we want to do that. There's no Mayberry RFD anymore. Crime's everywhere. But we've been blessed, but also police, fire, and EMS has made some of those blessings by being out on the forefront. Every time the blue lights run, pretty much if there's an incident, the red lights run with them as well for fire and EMS. So great teams, and we've got to keep public safety as priority one. You have to.
You do, and we're going to get to some of how that blends into Olive Branch because me having the background that I have, I started out in Mississippi in fire and EMS and eventually progressed to going to Memphis. And just to let you know, so we're going to talk about all those things in Olive Branch and how it affects you as a mayor and what you have to be in like a vision. People have to have a vision for what's going to come next. If you always react in the moment, you're never going to be prepared as you need to be. And thinking ahead, you're not always going to be prepared, but it helps you consider some of the things that are going to come your way. So whenever I started out in fire and EMS, there was back then, and we're talking late 1990s, it was, the pinnacle was Memphis, because it's the big city, it's the big action. And let's just face it, DeSoto County's grown quite a bit in the last 25 years.
Absolutely.
And so at that time, this was kind of like, you wanted to get your feet wet here, but then everybody wanted to go to Memphis. And that's where the money was. And it's funny because over the years, we've seen this area explode and the pay rise up to there. And many, I think I mentioned this to you before, a lot of guys I worked with in Memphis left Memphis to come back to DeSoto County. Several of my friends have come back to Olive Branch and even retired now from being here from the fire department. So
we're glad they did, and we appreciate that. EMS is a different element. I didn't realize till I got in this job, there's only 5 or 6 cities out of the 299 in the state of Mississippi that have a municipal or county-ran EMS program. Usually they have contractors in those other cities. And the contract vendor may stay a year, may stay 2 years, that you may rotate to another contractor. You don't have the same dedicated men and women that live usually in your cities and support your cities like we have, and we're fortunate in having that.
Absolutely. It builds a sense of unity, and then also, I mean, when you have the same folks working hand in hand, fire and EMS, it also builds a strength there that it's hard to imagine how a person coming in from the outside can know how you're functioning, what you need, if they're not with you every day. You mentioned that with the team membership. And so like you were building teams back then with your security. And then as a mayor, do you see how all these things kind of play together, right? So you have to work with the team. I would say they're the aldermen, right?
Absolutely. So, it's a team effort, and they do a great job. We have a veteran board, and but it is absolutely a team effort. Sometimes I bite my lip because I want my way. When I wore that black robe in court, I got my way in the courtroom. Right or wrong, I was always right, although I know I can be wrong. But when I ruled, I ruled. Now, appeal could have taken place, but in city government, I have to get 4 out of 7 votes to buy light bulbs for the light fixtures, and that's okay. That's how it should work. Checks and balances. They're the legislative body, obviously. I'm the executive branch. I run the day-to-day operation. They deal with the ordinances. They look at development approval for applications. They're legislative, and I don't tell them how to vote, and they don't tell me how to run the city. We have 500 employees. That's a lot, but we run the largest municipal gas company in the state. Municipal-owned gas company. We run an airport. No other city has an airport.
Right.
So we've got a lot of great things going on, and maintaining within budget is a great thing this city does. I told somebody last night, I came in the game on third base. I didn't hit a triple. I came in on third base. The previous mayors.
You're a pinch runner.
That's right, pinch runner. Previous mayors and administrations have done great. The finances of this city are in super condition. We just completed a bond rating earlier this year, and there's no government organization in the state of Mississippi that has a higher bond rating than the city of Olive Branch. Olive Branch and MDOT, Department of Transportation, have the highest bond ratings in the state. Nobody higher, and that speaks volumes to how the money's been managed. And I know people don't always want to hear about money, but for example, right now we're in a year with a $180 million budget. Capital and operating expenses combined, $180 million. Out of that $180 million, the residents pay less than 25 cents on a dollar in property taxes. We benefit from applying for grants and getting those grants, justifying them. It's not easy. You can't just raise your head and say, I want a grant.
Right.
Yet it's competitive. And the gas company, we sell gas. The water company, we sell that to residents outside of the city limits, in unincorporated areas, into Marshall County, down toward Tate County. So we have approximately 20,000 water customers, 25,000 connection points of where water connects one place or another. So over 1,800 linear miles of pipes, a very robust system, but keeping the residents' costs down is important. We have the lowest millage rate in the county out of all 5 cities, even lower than the township of Walls, have the lowest of all 5 cities, and we have not had a tax increase, a millage rate increase in a decade, and we've continued and worked hard to make sure that happens.
I know that you had said that you guys had the lowest taxes of the neighboring cities in DeSoto County, and all the things that you just mentioned about the structure of how it's all built. Obviously, that plays into why you're able to keep the taxes lower.
Right.
Absolutely. One thing that you mentioned, so I want to go back some. So sometimes it's almost like you watch that. Oh God, what was it? Sorry, I'm glitching for a second. Oh, I know what it was. Wayne's World. Did you ever see Wayne's World go doo? So sometimes I'll do that. We transfer back and forth. It's all good.
I thought that was old age. You just had a flashback. That's what happens to me.
Yeah, well, it does. And sometimes I have to go back to the other room I was in to remember what it was I was flashing back to. And then I go back. I'm like, I'm good now.
Love it.
So you were mentioning, though, that when you were in the courtroom, something we haven't brought up to. So not only 38 years with FedEx, and this all plays into leadership styles, skill sets that you'll build, the ability to approach problems and have a pragmatic way to work through it. But 38 years in FedEx with, and what was the title of the job? So I don't want to get that wrong.
I was Corporate Security Director when I retired.
Okay. And then you were 25 years as a civil criminal judge here in DeSoto County.
Right.
25
and now
years.
mayor.
And now the mayor.
I'd like to be a NASCAR driver, but my reflexes are getting too slow.
Well, you know what? There's a guy in Olive Branch that
Ricky Stenhouse.
Ricky Stenhouse. That's right. He's down here in Olive Branch.
He's done great, and we support Ricky without a doubt. But some would say maybe Ken don't know what he wants to be when he grows up.
Well, I think that's okay. That's actually a great message to young people, is you can always evolve. Yep. And you can take the things that you've been before and grow from that. And then those experiences are going to help you be even better at the next thing you choose to do.
But trust me, when you're 38 years and doing a part-time job, 25 of those same 38 years, lots of good help at both jobs and lots of good help at home, and blessed in order to have the health and the ability to do that, and I don't take that lightly.
Yeah.
So it's a great ride. And we're still riding and having fun and doing some good things for the residents of Olive Branch.
So we're about to dive into the what got you to the mayor side thing, but I wanted to throw in one little more fun caveat here to the judge thing.
Okay.
So you were saying that you have to convince the alderman. Do you think it would have helped if you would have been a lawyer some during those 25 years? Your arguing skills?
Maybe.
Yeah. I'm just throwing it in
maybe
there.
So.
I'm just throwing it in there.
Maybe
instead
so.
of just being like the gavel guy, sometimes you have to argue to yourself. And
Yeah,
do you argue? Are you able to win conversations with your wife? All right, that's all I need to know. The Paul's told me everything.
I did a lot of weddings. I did a lot of weddings as judge. I officiated them, and they would ask, "You're going to give us any wisdom before we get married.
Yeah.
And I would tell the male, you can be happy or you can be right. You can't be both. So you need to decide, you want to be happy or do you want to be right?
Yeah. So that is good. I think that's pretty good advice. And just a fun fact, I have too gotten my officiatory license and actually married 3 people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I used to say it's the only life sentence I could give. 6 months in the county jail, a year in the county jail. The marriage was the life sentence, but they had to make it work.
They had to make it work. It's funny because I got mine for a lady that was asking me to do their wedding, so I went and got my stuff. Ended up marrying 3 people.
Wow.
Before I ever got to her. So actually I've done 4 because she was the 4th. So anyways, it was just a fun story. All right, so now moving towards the moment that you decide that you want to be mayor. What is that like for you? What is that decision process? Because to me, I'm thinking, if I'm at home and I've done all these other things, you've already been 38 years FedEx, 21 years part-time as a judge, you clearly have lived a life of stuff. Sometimes getting into politics is not so easy. And it can be a lot of stress that the family even endures, because it's not just a one-way thing, right? So it's not just you. Yep. So when you make this decision, what's that like for you in your mind? What are you thinking about? Why did it bring you there? And what did your family think about it?
I had my eyes on the mayor's seat for a while and had absolutely gone to previous mayors, previous Mayor Reichard, previous Mayor Phillips, and I told them along the way, you will hear that I may run for mayor, but until I come and talk to you about it, I'm not running. First of all, that's the right way to do it. If as an incumbent, I'd tell them that. But secondly, rumor mill gets started when you're in politics, especially if you're a viable candidate. People want you to do certain things, but timing wasn't right. And I was definitely, as I say, all in Ken, because as justice court judge, even part-time, you have to resign to run for any other political position. A judge can run for another judge position and not resign, but if a judge runs for a non-judicial position, no matter what level, they have to resign. I even petitioned the Supreme Court. I said, look, this is a part-time job, yada, yada, yada. I'll take a leave of absence. I'll accept no pay. No. So it didn't happen, and it's for a reason. Courts have a lot of influence, even at a lower level. But as I say, I was all in Ken. I signed up and resigned.
Did you have to resign before you ran?
And I resigned the same day.
Wow.
But a great lesson for our young leaders is that I resigned on Tuesday, January the 2nd, and by Friday, same week, my replacement was named. And you know what? That's the way it should work. These jobs are bigger than any one person, and I hope that person has done great, and I hope they do better than I ever did, and whoever replaces me here or whoever replaces him at that job does better. That's the way it should work.
Yeah, that's extending a legacy. The truth is, you want to be the best at what it is you're doing, or you should want to be the best at whatever that thing is you're doing, but you want to do it in a way that it influences the next person coming in behind you to try to be even better. Raise the bar.
That's right.
Raise the bar,
That's
because in the end, that's the goal. If you're in leadership, it should be the goal, is to make things better and have an influence where people want to be better themselves.
Right.
So when you make this decision, you're all in, Ken. What's that first conversation with the wife? I got to know.
Oh, trust me, we had many conversations before that, because part of that resigning as judge was retiring from a career that I'd been at 38 years, going on 4 decades. So
that's
sweat
like leaving a
beads will
best
pop
friend,
out on your forehead, you know. But when you know, you know. And obviously, I'm a Christian. I put some prayer into it, and she did as well. And we were comfortable with it. We really were. And I sometimes smile when people say, well, God told me to run for that position, and He can, and He will, but He don't always tell you you're going to win.
That's true.
So sometimes it's in the journey, and it's building character.
Absolutely.
And it's not always that you're going to get just knighted or sanctioned for that position.
Can I add something to that? Because
Please.
that is, you're hitting on a chord that I live by on so many levels. Is sometimes, we may be feeling led, and we are led to do certain things, but the idea that because we're going to do this thing, it has to work the way that we see it working, will often skew our belief in why we did something. And the truth is, that's where it's, for me, faith lies, is the fact that if I go after something and it didn't work the way I saw it happening, then I have to ask myself, what was I learning from that moment? Because it's going to give me something I need later I didn't realize. I'll be honest with you. When I started down the road of being a motivational speaker, to be a podcaster and stuff, I had no idea what I was doing, Ken. I know you're like, well, I get that. I see that right now. I had no idea what I was going to be doing, but I just knew it was the right thing for me to do. And I knew that I needed to be that positive voice because I had that in me. Well, I pursued that. I went all in. Now, my wife at times, she'd raise eyebrows, but she also knows this about me. She knows when I get fixed on something and I go after it, just let it happen because it's like that obsesses me, right? So that's what's going to drive me.
Laser focus.
You got to have the laser focus. So when you go for mayor and you're running, you clearly had put all your cards out there, and if you didn't get it, then it was whatever happens next with Ken. But you end up getting elected 2021.
Right.
So when you come into the office, what are some of the first things, because I think people would want to know as a mayor, what are the first things that you want to try to address that you either are concerned about or you want to make sure they stay the same? Because sometimes you come in and it's like, these things are great, we don't need to change a lot on this.
Right. Well, first of all, I was thankful that the good people of Olive Branch had elected me 7 times as judge and then elected me as mayor. And I will say this, that I'm also very thankful of the leadership training at FedEx. Just because a person might win a popular vote doesn't mean they need to be running a city of 50,000 people with the kind of numbers we're talking about budget-wise. We are running a business. We're running a business. So the first things I thought about was, besides jokingly, they always say it takes a new guy a month to find the restroom and water fountain. But besides that, I brought the department heads in and I talked to them, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, had them provide me background on them. Theirself as a leader, and then what did their department need, and the old management by walking around was real important. It is real important, and because if you think you can come in and be a 90-day wonder and make those changes, you're wrong. Because some things before I went in that I would have changed, they needed to stay the same. So I need to see what was working.
So you were evolving in the process as well.
Absolutely.
Which has to happen that way.
It has to happen.
Yeah, and that's just paying attention, of course. And you said 50,000 people, so this is not a small city. What does this rank in Mississippi? Do you know?
It ranks 5th. You don't see that in the rankings because the last census has been a while, but it ranks 5th population-wise, and it ranks 2nd in geographical size, over 56 square miles. So we're the 2nd largest city in the state behind Jackson, Mississippi. And we're not trying to be Jackson, but we're the 2nd largest city geographical wise. And like it or not, we're going to continue to grow. We'll be if you and I are sitting here 4 years from today, we'll be saying Olive Branch is now the most populated city in the county.
Really? It'll overtake South Haven?
It will. It will. South Haven's a great place. Mayor Musselwhite and I are friends. I think that they're semi-landlocked, and I know that prior to me coming on board, the administration annexed 18.8, almost 19 square miles, where we're putting wastewater, we're putting sewer pipes on the east side of Olive Branch and on the south side of Olive Branch, and that will secure the growth on the east side of the county for the next 2 decades. Where your sewer line goes is where development goes. Developers can add that water line, it's not too costly. They can add a gas line, not too costly, but sewer is very, very expensive. And there are communities and subdivisions all over the United States, as far as that goes. Shelby County, I think of some great subdivisions out east. They can't grow anymore because there's no sewer capacity. EPA they don't embrace septic tanks. Lagoons over and over. They want, when you have a certain amount of houses, and rightfully so, they want a unified system to process wastewater. So that build on the east side and south side will secure the growth. And Olive Branch has a great mixture of residential, commercial, and industrial. We have a good mixture of that, and that's what keeps that tax base low, and it's what brings housing and residents to Olive Branch. Everybody wants to be the last one in and lock the door and tell nobody else.
It's not going to happen that way.
It's not going to happen.
There's an opportunity for growth, but and so I want to get to that, but I want to go back on one thing that you said, because I didn't realize that septic was so problematic as far as like trying to run the piping and that and put the system in, and it is expensive. I live in the county portion of Hernando, so I'm like on the far south side of Hernando, and we have septic out there, but we have city water. And I was always confused, like if they could run the city water, why do we not have sewer? But that makes sense then because it's not as easy.
Think about that small water pipe, that water's being pumped from a well, underground of course, just to fill that pipe. that sewer pipe is much larger, and it has to go to a treatment facility to be treated before it continues its path to whatever river or wherever it may go.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess, I've never worked in public works like that, so I didn't understand something. So I've learned something today, y'all. I'm a professor at college, but class is in session. So y'all should always think, what can I take from this? Today, I've just learned something about why my area is like it is. You mentioned this, that annexation is a part of city growth. It is. And I have friends that live in all the cities around us. So, I've been in DeSoto County my whole life, minus my military years. And so when I got out of the military, moved right back to DeSoto County. One of the things that people often dread, like my mom and dad dreaded it. They lived in Walls, and then Horn Lake started expanding and annexing. Right. And what they dreaded was they liked the public service, so you had more police, fire. You didn't have to worry about being patrolled, or if you call 911, if you were going to have anybody come to you. So that part was good, but they didn't like the taxes. Right. But that's a great sell point you guys have in Olive Branch, having the lowest taxes. So the expansion and annexation is not like dreaded in that respect. It's like, that's
well, I'm not a big annexation guy.
Yeah.
The board may convince me that I am, but we've got enough to say grace over right now.
Yeah.
But you have to think about also, and I was annexed in 1995. I lived in the unincorporated area. Now keep in mind, DeSoto County, 80% of the citizens live within a municipality. That unincorporated area is getting smaller and smaller. But I really didn't take, they said, what'd you get when you got annexed? Well, I got a sewer hookup and street lights and added police patrols, but I didn't realize that fire stations cost north of $1 million a year to run. The same fire station that would have been responding with the volunteer fire department or the county fire department, I was getting that service indirectly. I was driving on the same roadways and highways. My kids were playing at the city park. All these things cost a lot of money to support, and when you break it down to cost per day, I mean, you're talking, our millage rate is 0.385, 38.5. So for a $100,000 house, you're talking $385, $200,000, double that, et cetera. So to get that level of services in today's environment, I pay my taxes like everybody else, but I don't pay them just for the street in front of my house. Right. It goes for 385 miles of roadways. And Public Works can go out to any neighborhood and have to do major work along the street, whether it's a drainage ditch or sewage or septic lines, sewer lines, water lines. They can eat up all the taxes for 5 houses for 2 years in doing one major job. It's that costly nowadays. We spent a little over $12.5 million over the last 24 months resurfacing and paving our roadways. When I first heard that number, I said, we're gonna fix every street here. Well, guess what? One street was so badly damaged and needed repair, it cost $800,000, and it was a quarter of a mile long. So it very costly.
Yeah, and that's not a quarter of a mile, obviously. So I don't want to squirrel here, but I do want to relate that. And you guys, y'all pay attention to the national news and stuff. Obviously, all the damage just happened in North Carolina and all the roads that were wiped out. So you hear the mayor talking about that. Just consider how much work, how much money that's going to cost, obviously, to build that infrastructure back into those communities. One of the stories that came out recently, I don't know if you saw this, it's pretty fascinating, actually. There was a main road in North Carolina that supplied a lot of the area for all their needs. And the government was saying it's going to take about a year. Yeah. And then the coal miners were like, we can knock that out. And they went down like in a week and a half and did it. So I'm going to use that for a segue.
Okay.
Sometimes I segue perfect. All right, so this is a good segue because when you grow and you have this population base and you realize that it takes a village and it's hard sometimes to manage everything, and you realize that you can only do so much with the resources you have, it is important for community involvement. Right. And I know we spoke about this before. Right. So tell me about the citizens communities, because you have put together some committees where the citizens can be involved and also help.
That's right. I have a pastoral advisory committee, a senior citizen advisory committee, city beautification advisory, parks and recreation advisory, HOA and any subdivision advisory committee, where we meet every 3 months and I get input from them and decide and listen to what they want the city to do, which is important. we need to listen to the residents and do what they want done versus government trying to tell citizens what to do.
Right.
I'm not that guy. I'd rather hear what they want to do.
Yeah.
If we've got the funding and resources to do it, and if it's and the authority, then we're going to do it. There are many things I'd like to do that if it's not in that statute, we're a code government. And if it's not in that statute, I can't do it. When I sat on the bench, there's a lot of sentences I wanted to give, but if I didn't have the authority to do that, I couldn't do it.
Right.
So municipalities are restricted by codes. We're a code charter government, and it's difficult for a city of 50,000 to operate off the same laws. There's 299 cities in Mississippi, and 80% of them are less than 10,000 in population. So they have the laws that govern them govern the large cities, and I'm on the legislative committee. We get some changed, but it's a challenge because we're faced with opportunities and challenges that they don't have in the smaller cities.
Absolutely. You spoke about, you're going to grow a new fire station. You've got a new fire station coming in. Animal shelter.
Yep.
When is that supposed to be?
We will break ground for the animal shelter very likely next month.
Oh, okay. So pretty soon.
Pretty soon.
Yeah.
We've already broken ground for a public works building, which is desperately needed. 18,000 homes and 384 miles of roadways. The state maintains some of those. The city maintains the majority of them. And the men and women that do those things, we've got to have places for them to work, equipment sheds, those kind of things is very much needed. Fire station groundbreaking will be next year. It's at the 302 and Center Hill Road on the north side, actually the northwest side, and maybe less than a quarter of a mile north on Center Hill. That'll be fire station number 6.
Wow.
We operate the highest number of fire personnel of any city in the county now. So we're the largest.
I didn't realize that.
We're looking at Fire Station 6, which is needed, and it's going to be a great item. We bought a new fire admin building last year on Old Goodman. We sometimes recognize things by close to food places, but across the street from Sonic.
Yeah, well, you're in Mississippi. It's like you stop at a gas station and ask where they're going. They're going to give you a couple of landmarks. So
and one will probably be a restaurant.
And one of them will probably be a restaurant. You're absolutely right.
A great fire admin building. We're in the process of engineering work's been done. We're going to build 6 pickleball courts,
Pickleball's growing,
restrooms.
I got to get in on that.
And we would really like to give a shout out to the Homer Skelton Foundation because they funded the lion's share of those pickleball courts, and we're thankful that they work with the city and partner with us like that. So 6 pickleball courts, restrooms, and then down at the soccer fields on Church Road and Highway 305, we're adding 4 new soccer fields, restroom facility, a new concession stand, and 405 parking spaces, because when game change time takes place, traffic is horrendous, and those parking spaces are really needed. And just briefly, I'll shout out thank you to the residents because they voted for a 1% tourism tax about a year and a half ago, and that's on out-of-towners, as I say, people that stay in hotels and motels. It's not on food, it's on lodging only, and they overwhelmingly approved it, almost 91%, which is unheard of. Nobody likes a tax. I don't like to pay taxes.
Sure.
But guess what? That money from that 1%, I signed a $3.6 million bond this week. Every bit of that's going to build those soccer fields, restrooms, concession stand, and parking spaces. So the residents will be able to see next year, hey, what did I get when I voted for that? Here's what you got. And it's a very positive thing.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because I think that actually speaks volumes to Olive Branch in general, is the fact that if people are going to vote so resoundingly in favor of something like that, that means they have trust in the government. They have faith that you're going to do the things you're saying you're doing with what you're proposing.
Right.
And that's not always the case. You know, people are skeptical. I think that that's pretty normal. But to be able to see the growth and understand why it's important. Look, a big part for me of community, obviously, my title's Coach Camp, and I'm actually a coach. So being a part of kids and youth and that mentorship and playing sports, to me, is a part of their foundation that is so needed. Now, granted, not every kid wants to play sports. That's fine. But for those that do, it's important to have the facilities, and then you need great mentors and coaches that go in for the right reason. It's not always just about the W, right? But you want to build structure in those kids. And for that to happen, you have to have facilities.
Right.
And so putting the money into something like that, there is a value there that you can't quantitate and put on paper. And I'm glad that the citizens recognize that.
And we're very open.
Yeah.
Anytime there's no, for example, park facilities, if there's no scheduled game on those soccer fields and we're not doing maintenance work on them or trying to grow new grass, those fields are open. Same thing with the baseball fields. You go to a lot of other cities and say, I want to just walk up and play on your soccer field. Go to some schools and say, I want to just walk on, let me play on your football field. It's not going to happen. It's the citizens' facilities, and they can use them at will.
Absolutely. I want to ask you about this. So we've covered a lot of ground right now. We've done a really good job. Are you tired?
I'm tired, Coach.
All right, we got to get a little further.
3-minute drill.
I'm going to have to bring in some of the motivation. I got some Red Bull in the car.
All right.
I'll be right back.
All right.
So here's where we are. I want to know a little bit about, we've already talked about the expansion, the growth, all the things that are happening in Olive Branch, why Olive Branch is a great place to move to grow with. Obviously we have, and this is not bad mouthing, we have Memphis. And any big city, I don't care where you go in America, where the big cities are, you're also going to have a higher crime population. So as this area grows, you're going to have migration sometimes from all areas of people trying to come into here. But how do you keep crime out? What is some of the game plans? Because as the city grows, there obviously has to be, you being in law enforcement, I feel like you're about to have a crush answer on this one. What are some of the things you plan on putting in place as Olive Branch grows?
We could probably talk for hours, but first of all,
we're like at 5 minutes, so yeah.
I'm not a Memphis hater.
No, me either.
I'm a crime hater.
Me too.
Keep the crime up there,
yeah.
And the good folks can come down here. And what the criminals need to learn is they're not an endangered species. So it's not catch and release, and we don't want it, and we're going to do our best not to tolerate it, and they need to know that. We're a law and order community. The nation is under the rule of law. And if the law's bad, go get it changed. But if not, you follow the law. I learned early on in the court system, and this is maybe oversimplifying, but there's 3 buckets of people. One person's going to do what the laws, they're going to do it because that's the right thing to do. And they're going to salute and execute because that's the law. Another bucket's going to do it because they fear punishment. They don't want to pay a fine, or they don't want potential jail time, so they're going to do it for that reason. The third bucket, they're going to do whatever they want to do. They could care less.
It doesn't matter how many times they get caught.
It doesn't matter. It's like old home day at jail sometimes and a love-in, but we'll have 3 hots and a cot for them if we need to. But what we've got to do is make people understand we're just not going to tolerate those things. We are boots on the ground. We have a drone program.
Okay.
We're about to, and this is a newbie, we're about to announce very soon a citizens volunteer patrol, have a good looking car that's got a unique emblem.
Just like Police Academy.
And it says, it lets people know they're unarmed, but when the men and women, and we're fortunate, the residents, for the most part, love the police and fire, and they even tolerate government here. So we have a Citizens Police Academy. We've had hundreds of people go through that. So those people will be patrolling, let's say the big box stores, and if they see something out of order in the parking lot, they'll radio the armed officers to go there. They won't deal with it themselves. We don't want to put them in harm's way. If you're on vacation and you want a vacation watch of your home, then that patrol will do that. They'll do work our parades and our events. They'll help be the eyes and ears of the police department, which is awesome to have that. So we've got those programs in place, and have a very vigilant command staff, and they're fluid. They meet weekly, of course, but they also refocus where they need to refocus. But nothing better than the men and women that report things. We'd rather have that reported just because it doesn't look right, it doesn't feel right. Report it versus something happened and they say, well, I sure wish I'd have called. There's no city ever that's going to have enough first responders. So the citizens play a huge role in that. And the men and women fight it daily. They fight crime daily. And the citizens are a big help in that.
I'm sure you grew up in the same type of neighborhoods I did in DeSoto County, where you had neighborhood watch back in the day. You know, and that was still a community involvement style right there. And so it sounds like you're bringing some of that back. Now, I'm going to throw this out as a suggestion. I don't know if it's a possibility, but Michael Winslow, you know that guy? From Police Academy that makes all the sounds.
Okay, yeah, he's cool.
You need to bring him in.
I need to bring
to
him
do
in.
your first academy.
I need to bring
just have him a part of. I mean, I've went to one of his comedy shows.
He was so unique with those sounds. He was awesome. He really was. Those were back in the day. It's good, funny
That's right.
Relatively clean, good funny shows,
yeah.
and now it's all over the board. Just
it's true.
You know, but on the program too, I failed to mention the OPRs, the license plate readers. We solve crimes with those, and I caught a little flack early on about Big Brother. Well, look, it's not Big Brother. Your license plate, my license plate doesn't have a right to privacy, so I want to know who's coming in this city, who's leaving the city. I don't care if they're coming from the north, south, east, or west, and that's big. It's just like the camera at your home. Whether it's a Ring camera or a sophisticated camera, you want to know who's in your house, and that's how we use that to help protect and solve crimes.
Absolutely.
And our HOAs, a lot of neighborhoods have gone together and they've bought the same type camera system.
Okay.
And they can do that. The city can't pick and choose what neighborhoods to put cameras in. We would never have enough. Again, about 18,500 homes. So we could never do that. But HOAs and different subdivisions buy their camera system, and it records the in and out of their vehicles coming in and out of their subdivision, but also it meshes with the city system, and if there's a BOLO, be on the lookout for this type car with this tag. We're going to know when it went in there, and we'll be able to respond. So that's a good interface.
I know those things work. I watch Dateline.
Right.
And about every other Dateline, there's some obscure camera somewhere that caught the car coming and going at the same time. They're able to pin. I don't know how they do it, but you would, having worked in law enforcement as long as you did. It's pretty good.
It's a necessary evil.
It's a lot of work too, I'd imagine.
It is a lot of work, and it's a necessary evil, but it's here. You can put your head in the sand and say there's no cameras, but I think most of us realize that anytime we're in the public, not the private areas, assume that there's a camera.
I mean, everybody's got a camera in their hand now.
That's right.
And they're videotaping everything.
The next generation is going to be born with a cell phone.
They'll probably just be able to hit like a button and then their eye starts recording. I don't know how it's going to work, but Elon Musk, he's going to be up there helping out with stuff. I don't know what's going to happen next. I mean, the dude landed a rocket ship back where it took off from.
Amazing.
I don't even know what to say about that.
Amazing.
So we are getting close to the finish line, but I want to cover a few more things if I could. Now look, politics. I think that it is safe to say that it can be icky sticky in some areas.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it's polarizing for some. This is where I always try to have some balance to conversation. And me being a professor at college, you have a lot of young influencers, 20, 21, 22-year-old, and they don't see the world as broad as I might see it now, having several decades on these guys, right?
Yep.
So I want to try to keep it small for them. Right now, we just had a presidential election.
Right.
And I think that you could probably say pretty close to half the country, maybe not exactly.
We're a divided country.
And it's not just that their beliefs and their wants are so much different, but it's even that there's fear at times. And what I try to make sure that my students always know is regardless of the big, the national politics, it's so much more important to pay attention to your local politics because those are the individuals that really help mold the lifestyle you are living. You are living in that moment in your city, and they're having that kind of effect. So for you, having been here for a little while now, and I've been fortunate to speak to most of the mayors in DeSoto County and have them on the show.
I'm out of the cleanup batter?
Well, yes, home run, grand slam, right? And so most all of them do take something very serious, and that is problem solving. And so for you, moving forward 5 years from now, right? So we've mentioned, when is your term up? 4 years?
I am up for re-election in April of this coming April.
So it's coming April.
Yep.
Okay, that's what it was. Yep. You wanted to do another term.
Win with Ken.
Win with Ken. All in Ken, now win with Ken. And I know that you want to be here. We talked about that, and I think that's a big part of it too. You don't want somebody in charge of some stuff that don't want to be there. I've lived that life too.
Right.
So knowing how important it is for local politics and for people in the community to feel comfortable with that, even if the national scope has them feeling a certain way, what could you say to them to give them some comfort, give them some ideas about the future of Olive Branch over the next 5 years when All In Ken has now come to Win with Ken?
Well, first of all, I really dislike politics. I know that sounds strange. I've noticed you have two types of elected officials. One loves politicking and fundraising, and they really don't even like the job. Truth of the matter. And then another one likes the job and wants to do well, and they really would rather not have to ask for a dollar, but campaigns are very expensive, and I'm the latter one. I'd rather do the job than to go campaigning, but I think people need to understand that capitalism's been pretty darn good to everybody in this country. Even folks that are naysayers have benefited from capitalism.
Sure.
We've been blessed, and that's straightforward. but they also need to keep things in perspective. Yes, we're a divided nation, but let's agree on what we can agree on. We can't fix everything, but let's fix what we can. And let's realize this country's been through a lot of changes over a couple hundred years. And unfortunately, a civil war. You know, we survived a civil war, terrible, horrific. More men and women got killed in that civil war than all these other wars combined.
That's correct.
So we survived that, and we can survive what's going on now, but we have got to fix what we can fix, agree to disagree, and be civil about it. I don't want everybody thinking like me.
Sure.
But I want everybody looking like me, shaven-headed and a beard. No way.
You're a pretty
wouldn't
guy.
want that. No, I wouldn't want that. We need the diversity. Diversity pays, but also be open, work together, and it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I jokingly say we've got some great things in the city of Olive Branch. We've got some great roadways that are smooth, beautiful roadways, some so-so, some not so good. That's always going to be the case. I found my granddad's campaign card running for mayor in Big Bruce, Mississippi, back in 1960-something, and it was so funny. He said, I want to get our roadways drivable. They had bad roads then. I want to work well with the Board of Aldermen. They wanted that as well. I want to get the litter picked up. Back in the litter goes down every day. It needs to be picked up every day. I hate it. I despise it. I can't understand why people litter.
I can't
But
either.
people have to keep it in perspective that it is a marathon, and we're going to do what we can. We're going to be fiscally conservative. Hey, I could have a splash pad park. I could have all these things. I could fix every street in 1 year. I could have them all beautiful. But it'd be about $80 million to fix every street in 1 year, and that would double taxes, and I'm not prepared to do that and not going to do that.
Yeah.
But keep it in perspective and realize that I jokingly say all cities, we all have an ugly baby here or there. You don't want your baby to be ugly, and you know you've got to groom it, you've got to feed it, you've got to bring it around and get it pretty. But we'll get that baby pretty. We'll grow it pretty, but it's not going to be done overnight.
No, it takes time.
And keep leaders that are business-minded. If I would have been blessed to be voted in this job and not have had the business experience that I had, not the judge experience, not the political experience, but the business experience, I would be hard-pressed, even with the great men and women we have on the team at the city, I'd be hard-pressed to be doing what we're doing. This is a business, 500 employees, $180 million budget. We've talked about the scope, and it's not going to get smaller, so business leaders need to be in these jobs. It's very important that we maintain that.
You know, what you mentioned actually is a true cliche, and that is the more things change, the more they stay the same. You know, I mentioned this to you before that I was a big fan of Emergency, Johnny Arroyo. And it's just funny because back in the mid-'70s, the things they complained about on the show, which was a TV show, but it played pretty true to life as a whole. I mean, not all the emergencies they ran on, but the complaints and the issues they faced, there are a lot of the same thing that we face right now on fire departments. Whether it's, you know, being able to stave off attrition or what the fire department should hire or not hire and how they should put things into service. So it's just a lot of the same conversation. And the other part of this that I like that you mentioned too was that when it comes to diversity and the change of thought and the ability to work together, I always like to think of it this way. If I go to a restaurant, there are certain seasonings that I want on certain things, whether it's salt or whatever, but there has to be a balance. And what I like in my food may not be the same thing that you like in the food. So if we were making food together, I want us to be able to blend something that we both can at least work with and eat together. And I think that plays true to life, and especially whenever you're dealing with leadership in a city, the goal should not be to make something the way you want it or you see it, but the way that it benefits the most. And that is leadership in a nutshell to me. How can I bring something to the table that benefits the most people to create an environment where they are better tomorrow than they were today? And in the classroom and as a professor, that's one of the things that I strive every day is to balance my own personal feelings, to be able to be sensitive and understanding to theirs and realize that there are generational gaps. There's experience gaps massively. And so that's part of what I talk to them about in the political realm, because we have open conversations about stuff. And I want them to realize, and I've mentioned that, we went through a civil war. So even when you feel like your moment in time is the worst moment in time, take a step back and realize we have been through much more as a country, and it is our diversity that will lead us forward. And in the end, the beauty of America, and this is just an opinion, but I think most people could agree with it, is if you don't like your current situation and condition and place, you can actually go to another place. So that's beautiful. You don't always get that in all the other countries. If you haven't traveled, you should see it for yourself.
You're spot on. That is a great message. And check facts. Fact check. Call the mayor at City Hall. My number's on the website. My email's on the website. Find out what really happened. Don't listen to the Facebook trolls. A lot of times they don't even live in this state.
Oh, that's so true.
They stir the pot.
They just want to stir the pot. That's true.
Call and find out. And when people do that, they say, well, really, I didn't know that. I get it now. I understand. So the door's open for that. And sometimes they call and I didn't understand. And they make me understand, and then we go a different path. So input is vital, and we want that without
Absolutely.
a doubt.
Mayor, look, I appreciate you taking your time out. We've got a big thing coming up. It's actually tomorrow, but by the time this episode airs, it will have been a few weeks back. But we're speaking to, with the Hope Center, which is a mentorship group for students that are from 6th grade to 12th grade. And being a part of community also means that you're instilling that into the new future, the young people coming up, and you want them to see things. So I appreciate you. We're going to be speaking on the stage together tomorrow.
Yep.
When this comes out, it will be weeks ago.
That's right.
But in a real moment.
I'm going to be on your team, Coach.
Yeah, I'm glad to be on your team.
I'm ready to roll, baby.
So look, I want to just ask you, what would you have to leave my listeners with if you had like some words of encouragement, thought? This is Mayor Ken Adams' moment.
It sounds like a cliche, but this mayor cares about the residents. If I tell the department heads, if you don't have the sparkle in your eye and the love for the people, it's time to go somewhere else. So this mayor has that, the board has that, and we want to serve them, and we're going to grow together and make things happen the very, very best we can in the city of Olive Branch.
I think that's all a person could ever ask for, is to have somebody they feel like is on their team and they're looking out for them. And then in the end, honestly, be a part of the process. Don't sit back and think to yourself, well, I'm just waiting on somebody else. Get out there, be a part of the community, and you'll have an impact that will lead for years and years. Leave behind a legacy is what I always say. Well, Mayor, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy guy.
Yep.
You sit down with Coach Camp behind this beautiful silver microphone.
That's right.
Down here in the OBTV studios. And hey, look, I just had a great time.
Same here, Coach.
Thank you, sir. Look, to my listeners, let me tell you something. Continue to tune in. Go to my website, motivatewithcoachcamp.com. Go to my YouTube, subscribe. And until next time, Coach Camp out.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up, it's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape,